Jeremy, as we look ahead to conference, let's just start off on policy. You said in the last 24 hours or so that you're against the benefit cap, against having any form of benefit cap. Does that mean then you think that people on benefits should, if it keeps them in their homes, be able to claim £30,000, £35,000 a year?
It's a household benefit cap, and it has a very bad effect on inner city areas where the rents are very high, and the families are then forced to move out because the benefit cap can't meet the rent level. They're forced to go. My argument, and that of many colleagues who represent urban constituencies, is that we should be controlling the rents. The government has, after all, forced all councils to reduce their rents by 1%, same for housing associations, but are completely unprepared to even countenance the idea of controlling private sector rents. The effect on communities, on children, and of the almost social cleansing of central areas of London is huge, and I think the government has got to address that issue.
And you think it is social cleansing, but those who are in work and don't claim any benefits at all have to make decisions on where they live and on the rents they can afford based on their salary. And many people would say that those on benefits should make those same decisions as well.
Many people on benefits are in work because their wages are so low, they're able to access benefits to assist them to live. The tax credits have been cut. The benefit cap has meant that many have to move out, and so I've had situations in my own constituency where people in work are faced with the problem that they cannot afford a very high rent, they cannot get council housing because there is not enough of it, so they're then forced to move out and become unemployed and therefore claim even more in benefits, and these are people that are doing their best to get by.
So if necessary, if it enables them to stay in the homes and in their communities, they should be able to claim.
I think they should be.
30,000?
Well, you can't put a figure on it, but in the past there was no cap on it, and obviously it could be in a small number of cases more than the 23,000 that the government has said, but the number of people that gained it is very small. The amount of money saved in the overall budget from the family benefit cap or household benefit cap is actually quite small, but it is very damaging to certain parts of the country. I see it in my own community all the time, where children are then moved out of the area where they'd lived in their private rented accommodation. Their local authority puts them some distance away. The parents are keen to keep the children in the same school. So they're often undertaking very long journeys just to get to school. We need to think about this, the effect on those families, on those children, on those communities. And so I've asked for a review of this whole policy. My own view is I'm against the individual benefit cap because of the lack of any rent regulation. So my view is the government should introduce rent regulation.
In order to do that, there should be no limit at all.
Until we get rent regulation, this is the consequence we're going to pay. But within the overall budget of £119 billion, this is actually quite a small amount of money. It's something that some of our newspapers cotton on to all the time. The issue is actually the effect on some communities in some parts of the country and some families, and it's very, very damaging.
It is, however, one of the policy areas where we have seen disagreements between yourself and your shadow cabinet. Your shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions thinks there should be a cap. You don't. Can you see why voters, perhaps over the past week or so, have been a bit confused about the direction Labour is going? You say one thing, your shadow cabinet say another.
I was elected 12 days ago to this position. I put very clearly in my election statement a number of policy areas and made a number of statements, including this one. Obviously, the party has to come to a conclusion on this, but is it such a bad thing if politicians actually have an honest, open, respectful discussion and debate? We're actually on the same page in the same place. We want families to be able to survive properly. We want a benefit system that works so that people are not destitute, but we also need a housing policy that does provide sufficient housing for everybody. We're running a housing minus of 100,000 units per year under this government, and the lack of council house building, the lack of regulation of the private rented sector is all part of that problem. Everybody knows somebody who's got adult children who want to leave home, can't afford to go anywhere.
But it's also about leadership, isn't it? Because if you're saying one thing and your shadow cabinet is saying another, it's fine to say, yes, we're having a discussion, but people don't know the direction that Labour is going in. You've disagreed with your shadow cabinet this week over the future of the Trident nuclear deterrent, over NATO, over academy schools, on benefit cap. doesn't look very well to voters looking in.
We've not disagreed on academy schools. There is a discussion. There is a discussion going on all these issues. We want to do adult politics where you can have a serious, intelligent debate and discussion.
So
surely that's what the public want. Know that there is a discussion going on. We are going to reach a sensible conclusion on this, and we will come to a policy area.
So but tell me about when you come to a policy area. What happens if you still disagree? Do you have to therefore sack your member of the shadow cabinet?
I'm sure we're going to come to an agreement, and then we'll walk down the road together afterwards. That is what adult politics is about. I'm not into dictatorship. I'm into coming to a policy discussion, sensible policy discussion, come to conclusion.
What happens? Because some of your ministers have been quite clear. Your shadow ministers say they don't agree with your position. What happens if you can't come to an agreement?
We will come to agreements where we can. Where we can't come to agreements, either we would have to agree to differ, or there would have to be some other solution to it. But let's be optimistic about it. We're in one party. We are seeing a devastation of our welfare state going on all over the country by this government's policies. We're seeing a greater gap between the richest and the poorest than there's ever been. You've decided your important question is actually a very small area of social security expenditure. I've explained to you what the devastating impact of that will be. I hope all of our friends, all of your colleagues in the media will understand simple headlines about a benefit cap actually have quite devastating effects on people and communities.
But I was talking about a wider policy area, and Heidi Alexander, your Shadow Health Secretary, has written a paper along with some of her other colleagues and said quite clearly that voters' views are this. They see Labour as economically incompetent and they don't trust us with their money. Do you think she's right? This is your Shadow Health Secretary.
We are developing an economic policy. John McDonnell will be speaking at conference on Monday, at the Labour Party conference on Monday, and outlining it. And in it, we'll be demonstrating just how brutal the austerity packages are this government has put forward. How brutal the next round of cuts are going to be. Economic illiteracy and incompetence is what this government is performing against the majority of people in this country on frozen wages, falling living standards, huge cuts in local authority and other services. That is what is economically irresponsible.
But my question was about your Shadow Health Secretary, who's written this paper, who says that Labour is seen as economically
When did she write that paper?
She wrote that paper. It's called Red Shift, and she wrote it with Liam Byrne, Shabana Mahmood, Heidi Alexander, Nick Dakin and Caroline Bradley. That paper has come out very recently.
It came out before the leadership election for the party. It came out before her appointment to the Shadow Cabinet.
Right, so do you think she should change her views now?
She will contribute to Shadow Cabinet debates as she did yesterday and as a large number of members did yesterday. This is a different way of doing politics.
I was
elected to lead this party with a huge mandate and a very big franchise. I've developed and appointed a very balanced, very broad Shadow Cabinet. It's obvious there are people in there with different views, different traditions, different take on lots of things. Is that a weakness or a strength? I say it's an absolute strength. It shows preparedness of me as leader to listen to different opinions. It shows preparedness of all of those to accept those appointments and take part in that discussion. Surely that is good. That is adult politics. What people are fed up with is personal abuse and dictatorship politics. We're not doing that.
But at what point do you agree to disagree? I mean, where is it? If you're sat here and your Shadow Cabinet are taking different policy views to you, that's not going to end very well, and it's confusing for voters. Some voters, you just said strength or weakness, some voters might think that's a weakness.
I've been in office 12 days. We are developing these policies, we're developing the agenda, we're developing what we're going to do. We will come to a conclusion, and I'm sure there will be some give and take, there will be acceptance of positions, but there will be going forward. But the fundamental point of my election was opposition to austerity, opposition to the economic policies of this government, and criticism, yes, of the economic agenda offered by Labour in the last election, because I don't think it was clear enough on the economic agenda we were following. We were still, unfortunately, pursuing frozen wages in the public sector, as well as cuts in local authority and other expenditure. I think the public have had enough of seeing libraries closed, swimming pools closed, public sector wages frozen and privatisation of services within the NHS and in local government.
Can I take you through a few of the policy areas where, and I'm sure you'll admit this as well, there's been some confusion over the past week. There might be a vote on Syria. Have you decided yet whether you'll give your MPs a free vote if the government were to propose it?
We don't know if there's going to be a vote on Syria. We don't know what the proposals the government are going to put are yet, so it's very difficult to tell. All I know is that the Parliament voted not to bomb Syria in 2013 on a majority vote with Conservative rebellion, which helped that result to come about. There are a considerable number of Conservative MPs who are still opposed to bombing, not because they're supporters of ISIL any more than IEU or anybody else is, but they don't see it as a solution to the problem. My call is for a political development and a political solution which involves, and maybe that's already happening, Russia, United States, Iran, Turkey, as well as all the neighbouring states around there, and crucially, cutting off arms supplies and finance to ISIL. But it's also got to be a cultural attack on what is behind ISIL and its philosophy. But if we just bomb Syria, that will kill a lot of people. It might actually increase the strength of ISIL.
We know where you stand on it, but just for clarity, you haven't yet decided if you'll give your MPs a free vote?
We have not yet decided what our position is on this because we don't know what the proposals are yet, or indeed when they're going to be put, or indeed if they're going to be put.
The other answer many people like an answer to is whether or not you've decided if you're going to kneel in front of the Queen when you go to your Privy Council meeting.
I haven't been invited yet.
But you are aware that that's protocol. You weren't able to say to one of my colleagues on another channel last week whether or not you do that. Have you made up your mind?
I haven't made up my mind.
Right. Some people say that's not particularly quick decision making if you've not decided that over the past week.
I haven't made up my mind. It's an honest answer. Migration,
huge issue at the moment. We are not part of this European scheme. If every single constituency in this country took about 160 migrants, we'd easily reach a figure of 100,000. Do you think that is the sort of ambition we should be aiming
There has to be a European-wide response, and I think Britain was completely wrong not to join in the 2012 European approach towards the crisis faced by refugees and migrants. I think what's interesting has been the change in public opinion all across Europe in the past few weeks.
Do you think the public would accept a figure of 100,000, for example?
I think the public are well aware of the plight of people both in Calais as well as the Syrian refugees that are trying to cross in Austria and Germany at the present time, and I think they're very well aware of the magnificent response made by Germany and other countries. And there's got to be a European-wide response, but there's also got to take it wider. We have to look at the refugee crisis around the world. We cannot ignore it. It's the largest number of refugees ever in the history of this planet around the world at the moment, trying to find somewhere to live safely. So you have to deal with the issues of war, injustice, human rights and environmental degradation that caused the refugee flows in the first place. Secondly, I do give credit to the government for this, give support to the refugee camps in Lebanon, which they're doing, and I think we need to ensure there's far more European support goes to the refugee camps in Libya. It is no solution for people to drown in the Mediterranean or try to flee. The solution has to be to make conditions safe for them at the point of origin. But there are a large number of people who are in Europe at the present time who need somewhere to go. We should take our share of them.
And I'm just very interested in what is our share? What should our share be?
A fair share along with all other European countries.
What does that mean in numerical terms?
I don't know what the exact figure will be any more than you do. All I know is we should take our fair share along with every other European country. Germany and other countries have done a great deal. I think we should play our part in it. Remember, when people migrate, they migrate for a purpose because they're desperate. They migrate because they're trying to get somewhere safe. We have obligations under the 1951 Geneva Convention to give people a place of safety when they're fleeing legitimately persecution of any form, and we should hold to that. And we should also recognise the massive contribution that refugees have made to our society, our economy, our health service and our education service, and all the times that they've been here. So it's not a negative game, this is a whole issue of a human response to a human need, and recognise that actually we've got to reach out to each other. It's a decent response. Town halls around the country that are collecting aid for refugees are being inundated with offers and gifts at the moment. Surely that's a good thing.
You've spoken over the past week again about the unfair media treatment that's been handed out to some members of your extended family. Can I just ask you, did you think the media treatment of David Cameron over these allegations about an animal were fair or not fair?
I'm making no comment about allegations with anybody on personal attacks whatsoever.
About the media treatment of David Cameron on unsubstantiated allegations. Was that
the media treatment of any politician, unsubstantiated allegations, be it David Cameron, me or anybody else, is wrong. And too much of our media is obsessed with personality politics, obsessed with personal criticism of politicians, and therefore detracting away from what are actually very serious issues about people's housing, people's living standards, people's jobs, or world peace. And I say that kindly. I'm a member of the National Union of Journalists, actually. I say that kindly. Can we try and have a more grown-up media? Or is that too much to ask?
We welcome your support. Can I ask you this question?
No criticism of your good channel, of course.
You are well known for being a vegetarian. Your Shadow Environment Secretary said today that we should treat meat eaters like we treat smokers and stop people from eating meat. Is that something you have sympathy with?
I am a vegetarian. I personally don't eat meat and haven't for a very, very, very long time.
Should we treat meat eaters like smokers?
I think meat eaters, if they wish to carry on eating meat, that's up to them to do so. So I don't stop people eating meat. Indeed, many people that I know very well eat meat, often in front of me, and I tolerate it with the normal decency, courtesy and respect you would expect from me.
Now, you said you don't want to talk about personalities. Let's just quickly, at the very end here, just talk about you. A completely different job to the one you were doing before. Interviews, TV, conference speech next week. I presume a lot of planning is going into that conference speech. I hear you're having training of how to read an autocue. We're going to get a different sort of Jeremy Corbyn. You're succumbing to all that personality-driven, image-driven
I've done a lot of public meetings in my life. Indeed, I spoke at 100 events during this leadership campaign, and I've spoken at very many huge public events over the years. A speech to the Labour Party conference is slightly different because at the one level you're appealing to your own party and trying to give a message of direction to your own party. At the other, you're trying to deal with political debate. On the other hand, you're appealing to a much wider national, indeed international audience that's watching it. So it's a very interesting challenge. And I have to say, I've heard say this quietly on your channel, I've never used an autocue in my life before. And it's an interesting challenge. I've tried it out. Right. It's interesting.
So you've been having some training on the autocue?
Training, no. It's just me trying it out, actually, to see how I liked it. It's interesting.
And
do you want to try it?
If you're therefore going to read an autocue and you're going to do things in a more conventional way, are we going to see a different type of Jeremy Corbyn? Is this what everyone voted for when they voted for the different politician? The man reading an autocue, hairbrush, tie on maybe next week, who knows?
Look, it's me. I am what I am. I've been in Parliament for 30 years. I've taken up and been involved in lots of causes, most of which were very unpopular when I took them up. Later on, nobody could remember a time when they didn't agree with those particular issues. That's how politics works. I am very proud to be elected to this position, very proud of the more than 250,000 people that voted me into this position of enormous responsibility. We're doing politics in a different way. We're doing political development and debate bottom up, not top down. We're doing a much more inclusive kind of politics. And I tell you, a lot of people out there are doing things very differently. They're actually more interested in a politics where they can engage, they can debate, they can have their point of view heard, rather than a sort of open the box, here's your policies, that's what you get. No, let's develop it ground up. Young people coming into this kind of politics for the first time, fascinated by it. Older people returning to political activity because they see an openness. That's great. Our party has recruited a very large number of members, more than 60,000 since I was elected to this position only 12 days ago.
And we wish you well with your autocue endeavours next week.
Are you going to give me some training?
Thank you very much. I'll come and help you. You can come into our studio.